Hello there, I'm Tabletop Toby. It's time for episode 2 of my favorite board game things of the week. I'm very excited about one in particular, but I treat all my favorite things the same. No, not really, but so we're going to dive right in, but please do throw on your Klingon subtitles. That way, if I have any corrections, notes, anything after the fact, then I will be able to put those in and you will be informed of those. Please like and subscribe if you like this content. It's very much appreciated and it encourages me. And let's get into it. Chants for the Old Ones is on my list this week because it's a weird, dark theme. And it's also worker placement, deck building, which are two of my favorite mechanics in games. So, Chants for the Old Ones kind of flips the Cthulhu board game world on its head in terms of usually you are investigators in a Cthulhu board game, or Old Ones board game, and you are trying to prevent Cthulhu and the Old Ones from taking over the world or killing a bunch of people or doing whatever horrible things they do. But in Chants for the Old Ones, you are actually cultists trying to call your designated Old One, whether it's Cthulhu or one of the others. You get 2 at the beginning of the game, and they have different things that are required to perform this ceremony to call them upon the world. And when you have done that, you win. So everyone starts with their same 6 starting cards, and then you recruit cultists that give you different abilities and give you maybe higher power levels, which you might need a certain power level to call your Old One into the world. Now, the game is fairly Euro in that you're getting different kinds of resources, you're converting them to other resources, and you're kind of working through that chain. And so the way you're doing that are these different worker placement spots. You have to have a card that matches like the eye. And when you have that matching one, you can place one of your workers onto those spots and get those resources or recruit a cultist if you can pay the cost, whether it's power or knowledge, to recruit them into your cult. They go into your discard and then you'll get them back and play through. Now these temple spots are kind of potentially more powerful spots. You have to actually sacrifice one of the cultists from your cult in order to place one of those. But when you do place there, now you can activate all of the spots where you have those temple tokens, so they can be super powerful if you get a couple on one of those temples. And that sacrifice can be helpful. It's a way to cull your deck and make it more efficient because it's definitely about building your engine. And so that might be a good thing. Maybe you get a more powerful asylum placement card. And so you don't need the basic one anymore. So it's actually doing you a favor anyway. You can also sacrifice your cultist by going here. In that case, you get a sacrifice token, which is a coffin to show the sacrifice that the cultist made for you. And that can allow you to potentially pay for more powerful creatures, which we'll talk about in a minute. Before we get there, let's talk about these investigators. These investigators are going to try to infiltrate your cult. And so the way they do that is when you perform the worker recall action, when you're on a regular spot, not that one, that's a concealed spot, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Bring these back to your board. You can see on your board here, you actually have an encounter with an investigator. If you can't fend off the investigator who's following you back from your doings of evilness in the city, then the investigator will infiltrate your cult. It'll come back around and it's basically useless to you and you can't discard it. So when it comes into your hand, you're not going to be able to discard. So how do you get rid of these investigators that are clogging up your deck? Well, that's where these creatures come in. So you can recruit these creatures by taking that worker placement action, which you have cards that relate to that allow you to place a worker there. And if you can play the summoning cost, which in this case is 6. So how we would do that is you take 2, kind of put this underneath, and you're not using it for worker placement or anything else. You're just using it for its power until you get to that 6. And that would be your play for that placement to get up to the 6. I guess it would make more sense to not do the 1 there then. And then if I can pay the other cost that's on there as well, then I will also bring this creature into my cult to do my bidding You see up here in the upper left-hand corner, it allows you to place in this spot, which this is devour. And that allows you to devour an investigator that's in your hand. So if you have both of these in your hand, you use this creature to devour the investigator, which would go back into the investigator deck. And you also get a coffin for those. So that's another thing you can do. Maybe you're not worried about investigators coming in because you have creatures that are going to take them out. But I love the thematic nature of your going out and doing these horrible things and recruiting and doing all this stuff, and you're getting the attention of the investigators, and you have to be able to fend them off. Now, how you fend them off, you can get these tokens. You can have up to 2 of these kind of block investigators. There are cards that give you these tokens. There's also worker placement spots that give you those tokens. And there are also cards with that same symbol on there. These you don't use to place workers. Instead, if you have this in your hand and you're doing a recall action for that encounter, you can just discard this, and that makes it so you don't have to take an investigator into your hand. So there's the 2 primary ways to prevent investigators from getting in the first place, and then the creatures are the primary way to dispose of the investigators once they're in your cult. And then another way to avoid investigators is this is concealed when you place in that spot, and there are certain cards that have that concealment symbol on it, the little dotted line around the cultist. When you have one of those, you actually place in the concealed spot, but you do take the action of any spot that matches that. That's open, of course. And then when you recall from being concealed, then you don't have to have that encounter with the investigator because you've been more cautious. These are more cautious creatures or people. So I love the thematic aspect of that, the investigators coming in. And there's a lot of the old ones, and what your resources are you're getting, that's concealed from the other players. So that's kind of a cool part of the game, is that you don't quite know what the other cultists are going for. You can kind of get an idea. I did get the expansion that was part of the crowdfunding. This is Cthulhu's Awakening, where everyone is trying to summon Cthulhu. So there's a couple of things that twist up here. One is there's this individual placement board. There's this new symbol and cards that have that on it. And you have to complete a sequence of things. You have to call a special kind of cultist that has requirements. So you have to do these in sequence. That first, you have to get your Necronomicon, and these then become cards in your deck as well. There's a new resource, Ruins, and then you're going to have your specific requirements to call Cthulhu. So you do have to do these in order. And there's this rondel in the middle where you can place, and then they have all kinds of different things, whether it's getting ruins, trading out your hand, which can be hard to do in the main game without wasting more turns, getting creatures, and activating your temple spots from a different spot. So maybe if someone is blocked the spot you want, you can actually activate it from here for one where you have. You can even pay one of those new resources to activate someone else's temple spot, which is kind of cool. So that twists things up and kind of makes it a little bit more complicated, which I think would be appreciated as you play the game a little bit more. There's kind of a standard solo mode you can play where spots are blocked as you go along, and you're mainly fighting the investigators. But there's also this kind of campaign of a series of missions. It gives you different challenges, different goals you have to complete, different setup conditions, and then you can actually permanently add more advanced cultists. You do have to take an action to kind of activate them into your cult. You don't necessarily have to pay their resources. So it's kind of cool. You do get the feeling that you're building your cult over time, and they kind of really play with the mechanics of the game a little bit. There's a deck of cards that's specific to this campaign that kind of mix things up. You can get some special Necronomicon books. Definitely cool. It's not super long, but it mixes up if you are playing solo to give you kind of different objectives to face. There's really cool art in it as well, which is nice. So excited to dive into this more. I've mostly played it solo, but I think it's easy enough to learn, especially for people that are familiar with deck builders and worker placement, that you can kind of get them into it pretty quickly. That is why Chants for the Old Ones is one of my top things of the week. All right, my next top thing of the week is Unconscious Mind. This is probably my top thing of the week if I were ranking these. So this is also a worker placement game. This game is definitely higher on the complexity level. You'll see all these different things going on. It's based on Freud's theory of psychoanalysis. So you're interpreting dreams of your clients and helping them work through their issues as you get the resources on your rondel to interpret that dream. You'll get rewards on that, and then you'll heal them up. When you get to a certain point, you remove this grief layer, which is on top, which is a very cool mechanism. And the grief layer has its own set of rewards that you get. And then once you fully heal, you can open up this room and bring another patient in from the kind of market of patients there, and you have a new set of dreams that you get with them. But when you remove this grief layer, you also access different abilities, sometimes in-game scoring, sometimes abilities that help you in the course of the game. Here's the kind of worker placement component. So you're taking your ideas and you're putting them out there, and that allows you as kind of worker placement. You can double these up and take these actions twice. So this moves Freud around that board, or you can get these tiles, which you put in this engine, and every time you take a turn, you're moving this tonic, or whatever you want to call this, around the board, and then you can activate your engine to generate resources here, or to convert resources to something else, or this is lowering one thing to make another go up twice. Whatever that is, there's a lot of different options. As you see, these tile stacks are pretty big. One of your resources is coffee, which is kind of funny, so you can stay up later, generate more ideas, keep going. You can get these books that give you different resources, and then you can publish them, and then people can cite your book and publish their own book using that citation by taking one of your books that made up your treatise and using it in theirs, although you get compensated for that as well. So there is so much going on in here. But what's really cool is it seems like it's very well tested in terms of everything working together, and you can really build some engines if you pay attention to what you're slotting and how these run sideways and up and down, which is how you can activate these, how those tie into maybe the extra abilities you get from some of your patients, and then what dreams you're picking and what rewards those are. So you can really like chain things together. When you take a treatment turn, you can treat both of these patients, so you can treat them and clear out this dream, and then you're going to get the rewards on that, and that might allow you to do something with the dream of the other patient, and then you can get so much done when you get everything kind of working in sync, and it's really cool when it happens. And I am super jazzed about this. I'm definitely going to be doing more content on this game. It's so far one of my favorite games that I've played this year, and that is Unconscious Mind. All right, my last thing for this week is totally appropriate for a spooky time, and that is Halloween 2, a hidden movement game. So I just learned about the first game of this, listening to the Secret Cabal podcast. They were talking about playing it. And so it's a hidden movement game. So Michael Myers is, of course, the enemy, given that it's based on the movie of the same name, Halloween. And so Michael marks where he is, and there's rules about his movement. But as long as no one can see him, then no one knows where he is. So as the players move around, when they end their movement, my understanding is they have to choose which direction they are facing. And so they could walk into a room and Michael Myers could literally be right behind them. And if they're not looking in that direction, then he may, attack them on the next turn. And on the Secret Cabal podcast, they were talking about how fun it was because Michael would be across the board fighting someone. And then because, Michael is super powerful, superhuman in the movies and can move around, crazily around, they would think that they were safe on the other side of the board, but then Michael could actually get there sometimes and surprise them and be behind that door when they open it or whatever it is. And they indicated that it had those kind of like Michael Myers like jump scare to the extent that a board game can have that experience. So that just sounds really fun to me. I think this would be fun to have on hand to play, bring to game nights around Halloween. So I wanted to check it out. So I did pre-order the second one because it also, the BGG page indicates that it's a standalone game and it uses the same system as the original Halloween game that I heard the Secret Cabal talking about. However, it has optional rules for Michael to harm Laurie more easily. Apparently in the first game, something I saw as I was looking about the game, some people complained that Laurie was a little bit too strong. And, you know, she's supposed to be. She's resilient in the series of movies for sure, but that it was maybe a little bit too hard to kill her. And so this has optional rules to maybe address that. And Laurie is in the hospital now, so it's a different setting. And so I just figured I'd go with the one with maybe those optional rules thrown in as well. And I kind of like the hospital setting anyway. So I did pre-order this, so I'll be looking forward to checking that out when it comes. And yeah, just thought I would share that game because I had heard nothing about it. And it just sounds like a fun, like lighter game to bring out for some jump scares, to the extent there can be jump scares in board games. And those were my top 3 favorite board game things of the week. And I am really loving Unconscious Mind, y'all. It's the art, it's the mechanisms. When you get the sequencing and everything, it is so fun. I'm going to be doing some content on that for sure. And I'll give out another shout out to Andromeda's Edge here. I did a tips and trick video. I would like to do more content on that. I'm editing one now. Still loving Andromeda's Edge. I think it's a wonderful game. Area control, worker placement, engine building, you know, all the things that I love in space. So we'll end there. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And just remember, the only rule is that there are no rules except in board games.